Hi everybody, thank you for joining the Generator School Network's webinar on creating and maintaining an online learning cohort. We're so glad to have you here. So to get started, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Lana Peterson and I'm the Professional Development Manager here at NYLC. One of my main roles is actually to help maintain the online learning space, which is the Generator School Network, which is free for all users, and we'll send that link through later. And with me, I have Bill Connell, and he is our web manager, and he helps keep up the navigation and the logistics of the site as well, and he'll be our tech support today. So just to give you a little outline of what we'll be talking about today, first we'll talk about best practices within learning cohorts. Some people call them professional learning communities as well. And then we'll really talk about what the results of those effective cohorts have been in other schools or organizations. We'll talk about the online space for collaborative learning and how the internet could be a great place to hold your learning cohorts. Then we'll also talk about evaluation and accountability in online cohorts because we want to make sure that we're always moving towards student achievement. And then we're going to talk about how to utilize the Generator School Network as a tool in your learning cohorts as well. So we want to talk about what is a cohort and actually what makes it effective. Researchers often refer to cohorts as professional learning communities, like I said, or PLCs. I have a lot of friends who are in grad school right now and are actually studying this idea as well. But what we mean when we say cohort is quite similar. We mean a group of learners, and this could be a group of adult learners. It could also be a group of youth learners or a mixed group as well. But today for this webinar, we're going to be talking about educators who want to learn and be better at what they do. So there are some very specific qualities that these meetings and activities must include in order for them to produce positive outcomes. So in 2011, Richard Dufour, Rebecca Dufour, and Robert Eaker wrote up some preliminary ideas about the qualities of effective cohorts. Their work was based on several studies which were conducted starting in the 90s, and we're going to show you some of the qualities they found in effective learning cohorts. So, effective cohorts collaborate. And this can be one of the most difficult parts of starting an online learning cohort is depending on where you are and the politics of that organization as well. For example, providing opportunities to build on each other's ideas, and that may be creating a joint unit or a joint project or a joint paper, but being able to share different perspectives and that diverse sense of what is right. The next is really creating a safe space so that cohort members feel comfortable sharing. That needs to be done initially, and that could be done through team building, getting to know you games, but we want people to feel that they can make mistakes, that they can share their opinions, that they can really bring their diverse perspectives without feeling cornered, and that everything that they want to share is open. And then just providing that opportunity to share perspectives. So in learning communities, it's a little bit different than a classroom because there's not one person that's just feeding all of those ideas for other people to kind of take it in, but really that collaboration of what do you think and having those open-ended questions for people to share their ideas as well. So collaborate. The next best practice is shared values. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're all in the right place at the right time and making sure that you're interested in learning similar things, but also that you have defined values that you as a group of teachers or group of educators share amongst each other. Of course, you can still have diversity between ideas as well. But the first step to doing this would be to actually define those values as a group and work those out. This will also help you as a learning community stay on topic for your learning cohort as well. For instance, an example of this is we have 3 schools that are part of the Generator Go Green initiative, and these schools all come together as a learning cohort online because they're all practicing service learning and using it with environmentally focused service learning projects. And so that's kind of their shared value, is that they believe this is important, and they believe that service learning and with the focus of environmental education is really the path to student success. And then, just defining that focus as a group, I think, will help create better buy-in as well. So the next best practice is to hold each other accountable. And this can be really difficult, especially if you don't necessarily have a leader of the group. But each person needs to be accountable in order to make sure that everybody's providing the same amount to the learning cohort or the group. So one way to do this, where we've seen, is to make somebody accountable or the leader. Sometimes we know that professional learning communities look different compared to where you are. So sometimes it's an administrator or a teacher who's in charge of making sure that this learning community is successful, so that they can make different posts mandatory for teachers to share. Another way to do this is that people would have to commit in the beginning in some way. So that may be an agreement, maybe written, just something that they can share to make sure that they're demonstrating their commitment to the accountability piece. In order to hold people accountable, you must set out expectations. So how often do you expect people to participate? How often are you meeting, both either in an online space or an offline space? Maybe that's quantitating how many times someone should post per week or per month, and what those posts should be like, so people know what the expectation of them as a part of this cohort is. There also must be a system in place just in case somebody isn't meeting one of those expectations that you laid out in the beginning. So how exactly do you approach that person, or what would be the next steps if somebody isn't participating in the way that you agreed upon from the beginning as a group? The next best practice is to use student success to measure teacher success. It's really important that you make sure that what you're doing in your learning community is actually moving forward what's happening in your classroom or what's happening with your youth group. Because if not, then something needs to give or something needs to change as far as the focus is concerned. It's also important to use that data and what's happening in the classroom to learn from each other as well. And I just want to share one quote from the report on e-learning for educators from the National Institute for Community Innovation. When teachers have access to high-quality, results-driven, content-specific staff development, their students' academic achievement increases. And so looking at if something's not working, what part of that isn't being met necessarily? And then the next best practice is to reflect and evaluate your work. Just as it aligns with the K-12 service learning standards for quality practice, we know that reflection is an essential part of growing as an individual or a professional. It's important to carefully reflect upon the work that you do both in your cohort as well as in your classroom. This could be by using professional development assessments that are already created for you, or rubrics that as a learning cohort or as a group you create together. And especially really documenting the work that you do so you can see the progress that you made and you can build from year to year or from classroom to classroom as well. So really documenting and taking the time to look at what you're doing as a group and as well as an individual. And then the next best practice is to grow as professionals. And that's really based on going to trainings or bringing trainings in, sharing webinars such as this or other webinars, reading articles together, sharing information, doing it as a group and really supporting each other and what each other needs as professionals, and being able to be open and honest in what that looks like within your own life and your own practice as well. And then the last best practice is to implement systematic change. This is important because, of course, we don't want to just put a Band-Aid every time something's wrong in the school, and oh, let's quick do a learning community on that or a cohort, but really what needs to change in order for us to have success with our students and success as teachers. And sometimes this element integrates your school board or your administrators, or it has to change some sort of format that the school has. Some schools, and this is just an example, see professional learning communities differently. We're seeing more urban schools allowing teachers to have an hour of day outside of their prep hour to really meet with the other team members and have a learning cohort. Now, for most schools, that's just not an option, and professional learning communities look much different, but they're seeing a lot of success in that. So what systemic change can you see from integrating professional development into your everyday life? And then next we have all these together. So it's kind of a long list, it's kind of overwhelming, but if you focus on these in small batches, then it might come across a little bit easier for you. So we divided these based on logistical needs and processes. So in the next few slides, we'll talk about what each group will need in order to make these happen. So first we have the collaborate section, the shared values, and kind of the holding each other accountable. And we really see this as equaling a place to share. And so one example of how to use the Generator School Network for this is this example here. So this past summer, NYLC did a training with Guilford County teachers in North Carolina. And after that space where we had together, we continued that conversation and continued what we were talking about and those relationships that we built into an online space to continue to learn and to grow as professionals. And so this is one discussion. Discussions are a great way to connect people. Sometimes discussions can be based off of resources such as quotes or songs or poems or research documents, student work. But then other times it's really just about asking those open-ended questions and really pulling for those different perspectives. One thing that we would discourage against is just stating something as a comment, because it doesn't really elicit responses. So using discussions as one way to create a space and really create that safe space and then hold each other accountable to share in that space as well. So the next set of best practices, use student success and reflect and evaluate your work, we think really boils down to evaluation tools in order to get these things done. And so an example of this is on the Generator School Network. If your learning cohort was focused on service learning, which we hope it is, but we know not all are, we have assessment tools for teachers to be using. This is an example of one. So if you'd go to the Learn section of the Generator School Network, the first topic up there, I'm going to put a little starburst by it, is assessing the effectiveness of your classroom service learning project. If you were to click on that, it would take you to the topics page where we have a few discussions happening, but also we have the resource, which I'll put another starburst by, the GSN's Guide to Self-Assessment. This is a self-assessment that you could use both individually and share those results with your learning cohort, or you could build off of. Here's kind of an excerpt from that learning assessment. It may meet some of the standards that your learning cohort has, or it may be a model that you could base your own assessments off of as well. Sometimes it's hard to find the exact resource or assessment that fits your needs, and so as educators, we can always create our own assessments as well to help each other and to learn from each other and help your peers evaluate your work if you're open to that as well. And then the last set of best practices, bringing together a long list, was to grow as professionals and implement systemic change. And we see that as needing resources for learning more. And there's a lot of resources right now, but the Generator School Network is one great way to combine those resources together. And this is an example from the Park Stewards Program, which is part of the National Park Foundation. It's a grant program that gives high school teachers and students the opportunity to build and deepen a connection and that sense of stewardship for their national parks through personal engagement and service learning projects. So this is a group within the Generator School Network that has educators from the Park Foundation, high school educators, environmental educators, and foundation professionals as well. And really what they've used their group as is a huge library, so that people who are joining this program don't have to start from scratch, but they can see what other educators in the past have done in relation to service learning, and they can build on that. Educators can share some of their successes as well as some of the things that didn't work out so well, as well as the resources. And they've created this huge library for themselves because they've really documented everything that happened and evaluated the results that they saw from doing these projects as well. So this is one example of growing as professionals and really creating a system of how this grant program is going to work. So again, they're all together. Here they are. And so one could also ask themselves, what happens if we follow these best practices? But I want to show you one example of what we know happens, and that's from Guilford County Schools that were working together. A few years ago, they decided as a district they were going to adopt service learning as a district-wide methodology as a way to develop their character development curriculum. And so we've worked with Guilford County with many different trainings, but as a way to continually provide professional development, they've created a group on the Generator School Network. One great thing, which goes into the accountability piece, if you see my starburst there, everybody is required to become a member of this group, or at least the service learning leaders of each school. There's 120 schools in Guilford County, and so they really feed into this group and then feed what happens in this group back to their staff as well. Another thing that Guilford County does in their description is kind of explain how this is a district-wide initiative, and that talks kind of about the shared values that they have together. And then, of course, we have a library of different resources that the service learning coaches have felt are exemplar models for others to follow. So it's a great resource library that they have together. They have some discussions to elicit feedback and to create community down at the bottom. And then along the right side here is where everybody in Guilford County who's on the Generator School Network has actually shared their project for others to see and others to evaluate, assess, give feedback, and also to build on. And so this is really, a great model of how to use the Generator School Network to develop their learning cohorts. So, the results of the cohort. So, for an objective perspective from Susan Rosenholt's 1989 study that includes 78 schools, she concluded that teacher collaboration linked to shared goals, focused on student achievement, led to improved teacher learning, greater certainty about what was effective, higher levels of teacher commitment, and ultimately great gains in student achievement. I know that's kind of a long statement, but we want to kind of talk through what that means and what elements play into that, those results. And so first we're going to start with the basis and the best practices. So teacher collaboration, which really sums up especially that red diagram of best practices, plus shared goals focused on student achievement, and that's really the evaluation and growing as professionals. So when we combine all those best practices, there's 4 main results. The first result is improved teacher learning. Of course, we want our teachers teachers believe in lifelong learning, and so in fact they should be lifelong learners themselves as well. And this is one way that teachers are staying up to date on best practices for their classroom, and we're looking at, not just classroom as in creating lesson plans, creating units, but assessments and general practice as well. The next result was greater certainty about what was effective. And of course, we always want to do what's research-based and what we know will get the most effects for an achievement for our students. And so using research in a learning cohort or a professional learning community can provide greater certainty for teachers to know what's right in the instant, or to be able to plan for greater student achievement in general. Next, we have higher levels of teacher commitment. And of course, if teachers are invested in the school and invested in the community, that's a ripple effect. That's going to ripple to the students, that's going to ripple to the parents, administration, and also, again, ripple into student achievement because they have greater personal investment in those students achieving and having a successful school year. And then last, greater gains in student achievement. And that's really the quantitative result of this study, and just looking at, did this work? And it did. And so we know that learning cohorts equals positive change. So next, we just want to talk about the learning internet process and why internet is a great place for professional learning communities as well. And then for this, we're going to use a diagram from the report that I mentioned earlier, the National Institute for Community Innovations, just to talk about why the internet is a great place to do learning cohorts. First is time for learning. It's really hard to find time for staff development. It often has to equal teacher workshop days or after school long meetings when a lot of people can't come, or sending teachers to conferences, which takes them out of their classroom, which we know is not always a good thing. The great part about e-learning is that it's flexible. You could do it before school if you're an early riser. You can do it at your prep, after school, or even late at night after you've fed your kids and put them to bed and you're sitting on your couch with your laptop. It's flexible to what works for you and also what day of the week works for you. You can, create deadlines, and maybe it's better on the weekends or maybe it's better on the weekday. So the time is very flexible. The place, as we know, travel costs are really high. It's harder to get people to approve travel costs, and so this is a great way that we can eliminate that process. Anywhere that you can access the internet or you have computer, which most of our schools do and most of the classrooms do, you can access your professional learning community, which is awesome. And then we have the opportunities for learning. So again, that geographic region, a lot of people, their learning cohort is the other teachers at their school, which is great, and it's fine because you're working together with a common set of students, but that's not the only way that it has to be. We can also make it so that, if there's a teacher across the country or across the, continent that has another, has similar interests and wants to learn with you, that can happen. And then the last one is the design for learning. So most learning occurs in a formal structure where the one size fits all. But the learning experiences through e-learning is really customizable, and you can investigate or not investigate as much as you want to. It supports the just-in-time learning. So this is a really great way to advance yourself as a professional as well and meet your needs personally too. So I'm just going to go through how you would create a group within the Generator School Network. If you signed on to the GSN, which is a free resource for all, this would be your dashboard or your main page. Again, it's broken into Learn, Plan, and Connect. And Connect is where all the groups are stored. So if you click on Connect, you'll see all of the groups and all of the discussions. But you'll want to scroll down to the bottom and click that link that says See All Groups. From there, you'll see kind of the newest groups and the active groups, but you'll have that big red button on the top that says create a new group. Of course, you would need like a name and a description of that group, and that can be edited at any time if things seem to change a little bit. And then that avatar option is to create a picture for your group, and we really support people, and we promote people using a picture so that people understand what your group is, and it creates a greater sense of community. From there, you would create a group, and you can invite others to join your group as well, or you can make it open for anybody to join too. And then here is my contact information. If you have any questions or if you want to talk through how to maintain that online learning cohort, we would love for you to contact us. We have many examples that we can share with you if you want further information. But again, thank you so much, and we hope to see you on future webinars to come.